الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وبعد. We begin by praising Allah, we praise Him, we seek His help and we ask for His forgiveness, and we take refuge with Allah from the evil of ourselves and from the evil consequence of our evil actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, no one can misguide, and whomsoever Allah leaves to go astray, no one can guide. And I testify that Allah alone is worthy of being worshipped, and that Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, is the servant of Allah and his final messenger. Brothers and sisters, there are many topics or many aspects of this topic that could be covered tonight. But what I want to start with first is something that is slightly broader than just merely a discussion on the challenges facing Muslims at university. And let's take a broader topic than that, and that is the challenge of Muslims living in the West. However temporarily living in the West, but there are challenges that are facing, or let's not even say the West, let's say the challenges facing Muslims coming into a non-Muslim environment. I suppose we could even question how Islamic the environment is in some of the Islamic countries. They could be highly questioned as to exactly how Islamic they are, and that's another discussion, another debate for another time. But there is certainly something that is happening here. Muslims are in this country, and the point that I really want to stress primarily is that the philosophical and ethical basis of this society is different, radically different. In fact, I might even say almost diametrically opposed to the philosophy that a Muslim would have. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to say they're actually completely poles apart, they're completely opposite, because there's no doubt, of course, that a Muslim would find many commonalities between the Western idea and the things that Islam teaches. And of course we all have many things in common as human beings. The fact that we're human beings means that we share many things in common. But I think what we have to do is sort of put those things aside here, and because in fact what we have in common is a lot, and in reality what we have that is different is actually quite small compared to what we have in common. But that doesn't mean that those differences are not important and not significant. In fact, it is in these details and in these differences that the really important matters take place. So, I want us to think about a word. I'm sure you are familiar with this word, and it is the word deen. It's the word in Arabic, deen. It's a word that appears in the Quran. And let me mention a few places where the Quran mentions the term deen. One place I want to mention, Inna Deena Indallahi Islam. Inna Deena Indallahi Islam. Which means verily, Inna means verily, certainly, definitely, without any doubt. It's an emphatic way of saying certainly, the deen with Allah is Islam. Certainly the deen with Allah is Islam. Another verse of the Quran tells us, or the English meaning of it is, I can't remember in Arabic right now, but whoever chooses a deen other than Islam, it will never be accepted from them. And in the next life, they will be from the losers. So whoever chooses a deen other than Islam, then it will never be accepted from them. and in the next life they will be from the losers. Let's mention another very important surah. The Prophet ﷺ once saw a man praying the 2 rak'ah of Sunnah of Fajr. And in this 2 rak'ah he heard him reciting Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun. So Surah Al-Kafirun. He said this is a man who knows his deen. And in another surah he heard him reciting Surah Al-Ikhlas. He said this is a person who knows his Lord. So Surah Al-Kafirun, the Prophet ﷺ described this surah as a person who knows his deen. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا أَبَدتُّمْ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ الدِّينِ. O you people who are rejecting faith, you will not worship what I worship, and I don't worship what you worship, and you will never worship what I worship, and I will never worship what you worship. Lakum dinukum waliya deen. You to your deen, and me to my deen. This is something very, very important. That one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ he came to do is to distinguish this deen, the deen that is approved of and by God, this deen of Islam, to distinguish it and clarify it and separate it from every other deen. And that it is the promise of the Quran that this deen will become dominant. It will become dominant. So what is this word deen that we keep hearing and keep mentioning again and again? Sometimes you will find the word deen is translated as religion. However, I think that it is very important that when we talk about or we use words, we always need to understand the context in which those words are understood. That's, by the way, one of the problems with translations. That's one of the problems if any group of people, and I'm particularly thinking, really, to tell you the truth, of the Christians and the discussion we had yesterday, is that when you base your doctrine upon a translation, and although we could, I don't want to go into it, it's not the time or the place for it, but just say you base your doctrine on a translation, just basing your doctrine on translation is a very, very difficult procedure. In fact, it becomes more problematic if the language you are translating from is a dead language. What do we say when it's a dead language? A dead language is, first of all, it's not a language that is spoken anymore. It's not an actual language of communication anymore. But part of the problem with dead languages is it becomes very difficult to know what did this word mean in this particular context. Even with a living language, that's very difficult. For example, 100 years ago, if you use the word gay, it had a very different meaning from the word gay today. If you say today, I'm feeling very gay, right? Okay? People are going to look at you, that they know that gay means happy and this and that, but, people generally, especially, virile heterosexuals, would feel uncomfortable using that word gay, because why? It has another connotation. So words, we have to understand words within the context in which they are used. This is a broader topic that is important, which I'm going to refer to, of neuro-linguistic programming. The whole idea of programming, the whole concept of how we are programmed, and the whole way in which our thought processes are manipulated. This, brothers and sisters, is a lot more dangerous alcohol. It's a lot more dangerous than drugs. It's a lot more dangerous than women. It's a lot more dangerous than sexually transmitted diseases. It's a lot more dangerous than boyfriends, right? It's a lot more dangerous than discos, right? This is much more dangerous. Because I'm sure that most of you know that these are sins. If you fell into any of those things, you would know that you are committing a sin, and that inshallah you would repent from that. But the programming that is going on is something much more dangerous. It's something that can affect the very essence of your being. It's something that can affect your relationship with Allah. It's something that can affect as to whether you really are a Muslim or not. Okay? This is why great, insightful scholars have taught about the most dangerous and insidious warfare that is taking place. It's what they call Ghazwat al-Fiqri. It is the war of ideas. The war of ideas is a battle, and it is a war that is more important, that is more dangerous than the physical battle and the physical conflict that is taking place. And that is why the greatest jihad, the greatest struggle, is the one that takes place inside yourself. It is to make the understanding, that as a Muslim, your priority, your task, in fact your only goal in life, is to make your actions, whether they are the actions of the heart or the actions of the limbs, actions that are pleasing to Allah. Everything else is in fact a waste of time. Everything else is a waste of energy. Everything else is a distraction. The whole world, the Prophet ﷺ said, is cursed. The whole world is cursed. Meaning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy has been deprived of everything in this world, except the scholar, the student of knowledge, the remembrance of Allah, and what helps you to do that. The scholar, the student of knowledge, the remembrance of Allah, and what helps you to do that. If whatever you're doing, you're thinking, or you're saying does not fall into one of those 3, 4 categories, it's cursed, it's deprived of benefit, it's deprived of blessing. So this is something very deep and very significant. Because as I mentioned, if you were there yesterday, the purpose of life, as you know, the Quran says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That Allah has not created the human beings and jinn except to worship Him. There is no other purpose for your existence. You exist to worship Allah. While you are in the state of worshipping and obedience and submission to Allah, you are fulfilling the purpose of your existence. As long as you are away from that, you are not fulfilling the purpose of your existence. It's that simple. And therefore this concept of deen, when we say religion, let us understand that the term religion, when used in this society and when used by most people, and this is even true today in many Muslim countries, religion has today a very narrowly confined spectrum. People imagine that religion, when I say the word religion, they immediately think of a few life transitional processes or practices, some rituals that take place. For the Christian, I mean it in the broader sense, for the Christian in this country, religion really may only mean baptism, if that. Getting married in church, if that. Burial, probably still that. Christmas, almost definitely, and maybe Easter. for those who are religious, you know, a bit more religious, church on Sunday. I mean, that's it. That's what is understood by religion. Because the concept of religion has become secularized. We live in a secular society. A society that has separated religion from life. So here is the religious practice and here is the rest of your life. And in reality, although of course many would not claim that that's the case, but in reality, those two things have become more and more separated. Thus, for example, we have an issue, it's an interesting issue taking place, where I think it's Jackie Smith, right, who's one of the ministers, she's a Catholic. Because her ministerial position meant that she was going to be involved in voting on a bill that involved experimenting with human embryos, which the government wants to pass, but as a Catholic she conscientiously couldn't do it. There's a lot of fuss being made about that. People are saying, wait a minute, this is a secular society. Your religious belief should have nothing to do with how you legislate. Because secularism means that those two things should be separated. Of course, the issue that is brought to the forefront is the contradiction. Is that if you actually hold a religious conviction, and those religious convictions mean that you hang on to certain moral paradigms, what if those moral paradigms contradict with the laws of a secular society? Now, you know, these things only occasionally emerge in this secular society. Because they have managed by and large to divorce religion from life. And once in a while there seems to be a little bit of a clash, but it very soon settles down. But the point I want to say here is when I say religion, if I say religion, that word produces a concept in your mind. And deen is not religion. Deen is not that concept. The word in Islam, the word in the Quran, deen, does not mean religion as it is understood today. No. Everybody has a deen. Because if I asked you, does an atheist have a religion? Do atheists have a religion? What's the answer to that? No, they don't. They don't, not as the word religion is understood. Atheists do not have a religion as it is understood. Right? A person who is not a Christian or a Jew, he doesn't subscribe to any one of the religions, they just, you know, they have sex, smoke drugs, drink alcohol, listen to music, yeah? And does that person have a religion? As the word religion is understood? No. But do they have a deen? Yes. Because everybody has a deen. Not everyone has a religion, but everyone certainly has a deen. Because a deen, your deen is the way you live your life. It's your lifestyle, your life choice. It's your way of living. That is a better way to translate the word deen. The way of living, the way that you live. And the way that you live is based upon the beliefs that you have, and from those beliefs that you have, the thoughts, the ideas, the morals, the paradigms, they come from those beliefs. You see, belief, true belief, must by necessity be linked to some action or inaction. I'll give you an example. If I say, there's a fire, right? And I just burst in, there's a fire in the building. What are you going to do?
Run.
You're going to run. Right? Because if you believe what I say, that belief is going to be linked to an action. Right? If I come in and say, there's a fire, you go, yeah, whatever, then I know you don't believe me. Right? Belief and action are two things that are connected. beliefs affect the way that you behave. If they don't, then we could say fairly that they are not truly beliefs. Those things are not really beliefs. You don't really believe them. So deen, let's think of deen as the way that you live your life. It's your life, it's your lifestyle. Now let's ask ourselves, what is our deen? Inna deena inda Allahi Islam. Verily, the way of living, the lifestyle, the way of living with Allah is Islam. Not the religion. The way of living with Allah is the way of living that is submission to Allah. That is not something that is a part-time occupation. It's not something that you do for some bits of your life. But many Muslims are like that. Many Muslims are Ramadan, well, you know, I suppose the most extreme Muslim is the Hajj Muslim. You know, the one who says, I'll make Hajj when I'm 60 and then I'll change my life. That's the Hajji Muslim, right? No prayer, not even Ramadan, not even going to Eid, nothing. They do nothing. They don't follow anything of Islam. Maybe, as the Prophet ﷺ said, a time will come when a person, that all you will find with them, all that you will find left of the deen is they are following their desires. That's all it is. You know, they will keep away from evil, but they only keep away from evil because it's in their desires that they don't like that evil. There may be people here who are, you know, they don't like homosexuality. Why? Because they just don't feel comfortable with it. They'll just as readily drink alcohol, fornicate, have girlfriends, whatever, but homosexuality, they won't do it. Because really, why? They just don't feel comfortable with it. In fact, in reality, the morality is just their desires. This one I desire, that one I don't. That doesn't make you a Muslim. Doesn't make you a better person. You know, your morality is not founded upon anything solid, except that just happens to be some things I like or don't like. And the Prophet mentioned they will only keep away from evil when it doesn't, he didn't say they won't keep away from evil, they will, but only when it accords with their desires. And they only do good when it accords with their desires. So there's something different about the Muslim. The Muslim does not follow their desires. Their God is not their desires. They are not led by their desires. It's not what I feel like. It's not what I want. Being a Muslim is determined by what Allah tells us, what our Creator has guided us to. That's what being a Muslim is about. Whether I like it or I don't like it. Whether it is in accordance with my culture or not. Whether it's in accordance with my parents want or not. What my friends say or not. That's not the issue. Whether it fits in with my lifestyle, because the Muslim's lifestyle is Islam. It is a way of living. It is submission and surrender to Allah. That's what Islam means, from istislam, to submit, to surrender. And it is something that is total, it's something that's complete. It's something that affects every aspect of the life. Qul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. Say, inna, verily, inna salati, verily, my salat, my prayer, my ritual prayer, wa nusuki, and my sacrifice, wa mahya, and my life, wa mamati, and my death, is all for Allah. It is all for Allah. So this is something comprehensive. This is something that encompasses every aspect of our being. You see, for 5 years I worked in the London Central Mosque, and I wanted to try and how can I explain to these non-Muslim kids who are coming to find out about the mosque and about Islam, how can I get them to understand what Islam is about? You know, if I say to you, so again, let's go back to neuro-linguistic programming. If I say to most of you, even Muslims, if I say to you the word submission, submission. What do you think? For most people, the word submission, is that negative or is that positive? Does it produce a positive feeling or a negative feeling? What do you think? Yeah, it's negative. Right? So when you go around saying Islam means submission, you just turn them off right there. You know? Because why? Because they're taught that they are free. This is a free society. We believe in freedom. This is a war against our freedoms, Bush said to everybody. Freedom, freedom, freedom. You're free. So if you say to people, submit, it's like the opposite of freedom. Why would I want to submit when I'm free? But of course, this is just brainwashing. That's all it is. It's propaganda. It's brainwashing. There is no such thing as freedom. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Am I free to kill whoever I like? Am I free to have sex with whoever I like? Am I free to park my car wherever I like? Am I free to even drive my car without a safety belt? If I feel like it. Can I even, you know, actually let's take an iconic moment. An iconic cinematic moment of freedom. There is a film called Easy Rider. This film, Easy Rider, I suppose, epitomizes the whole concept of freedom in the West. You have these guys on their Harley Davidsons, you know, on a road trip going around America, right? Born to be wild, yeah. So I know I probably look like one of those guys, right? So there they are on their Harleys, you know, and the whole idea is that there you are on your Harley Davidson, you know, the wind is blowing your hair and this and that, and you're... No, in England you can't do that because if you want to ride a motorcycle, you have to wear a helmet. Freedom. What freedom are we talking about? I'm not free in certain countries in Europe to deny the Holocaust. What happened to freedom of speech? The holy cow of all holy cows. I'm not free to make racially charged comments. I could be arrested. In fact, my freedoms are restricted in all sorts of ways. So what does it mean, freedom, exactly? What is this freedom? It's something that doesn't exist. I mean, all you can say is, freedom is something relative. I'm free relative to these people. But even then you will find that you're only free relative to those people in certain respects. In certain respects. So, it's really brainwashing. It's indoctrination. This claim to be freedom. And of course the irony is that they're not free at all. They are enslaved. Totally. Look at the whole financial system. In fact, the way that people are enslaved to banks, it's just amazing what's going on right now. People are virtually serfs. It's like serfdom. If you study feudalism, how in Europe there was the feudal system, and in the feudal system the lords protected the peasants, the serfs, from, you know, other lords, in fact, right? By offering them the protection of their castle, and in return for that, the serfs were basically they were slaves, but they were not slaves by name, but by reality they were. They worked on the lord's land, they paid the lord rent. Of course, almost always they never were able to produce enough produce to pay off the rent, which means they were constantly in debt, which means they were basically owned by the lords. Which sounds pretty much like everyone's situation with the banks right now. And the amazing thing is, when the banks collapse, the serfs have to pay from their own taxes to save the banks. Isn't that amazing? It's like when the master gets the stick and he beats his slave so much the stick breaks, then the slave has to pay to fix the stick. It's incredible. This is the system. This is the system that they've been calling the system that should rule the world. But you know, the emperor has no clothes. It's now, look at the king, look at the king, look at the king, the king, the king. The king is in the altogether, the altogether. as the old song goes, he's naked. The naked emperor. He's got no clothes. This is the freedom. This is what they've been calling everybody to. But what freedom is it? In reality, it's indoctrination. It's brainwashing. Neuro-linguistic programming. That's why words, you have to be so careful. So what is your deen? What is your deen? What is your way of living? This is what you have to think of as a Muslim. You see, here in this society, you are being subjected to the most powerful propaganda indoctrination system that has been known to mankind. The Western media system is the most powerful system of indoctrination. I truly believe that. And it's clever, it's subtle, it's backed by science, psychology. They have delved into the depths of human psychology. It is absolutely incredible. You don't know it, but when you walk into a supermarket, you just walk into a supermarket, you are immediately subjected to hours, to what is in fact a scientific attempt to get you to buy. That is backed by thousands of pounds worth and uncounted numbers of hours of scientific research that knows exactly how you think, to exactly make you buy this and buy that. In fact, it becomes scary how free you are not when you begin to study this thing, to see how easily we are led. And we shouldn't fool ourselves. The West has a philosophical basis, it has an ideology which drives it, it has a concept, it has a theology. We don't call it a religion, but it has all the hallmarks of religion. There is a set of beliefs that you need to follow, a set of practices that you're expected to adhere to. I'm not saying that practices, beliefs, or these things are inherently bad. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about necessarily. But what are these practices, what are working? It simply comes down to consumerism. You are being trained. You see, the problem with university, the biggest problem with university is not girls, it's not boys, it's not alcohol, okay, it's none of those things. The biggest problem with university is that what is really happening is not education, it is indoctrination. You are being indoctrinated. You are being trained. You are being brainwashed. You are being prepared to be just another cog. Just another piece of the machine. You're just another cog in the machine of mass consumerism. That's all you're really being trained to be. That's why you're here. So you can be another piece of the machine. You can just help the machine turning around. And what machine is it? Again, that may not necessarily be a bad thing, but what is the machine that you're being trained to be a part of? This is the question you have to ask yourself. You're being trained to be a piece of this consumer society. An ideology, a religion, a concept that tells us that happiness is by consuming. Happiness is by consuming the products of the consumer society. That by buying this and having this and purchasing that and having this holiday there and having this car and having all of these things, by having all of these things you'll be happy, you'll be complete, your life will be successful. That's what, even ask anyone, define for me success. Who is a successful person? I mean, there's a time in history when someone might actually point to a monk sitting on a pillar, and he's been there for 40, 50 years, or 20 years, sitting on top of a pillar. This happened. There was a time he said, oh, there's a successful one. And he wouldn't point to the merchant dressed in silk. He would actually think that the hermit, the monk, the religious person, that's the one he's achieved, the enlightened one has achieved something. Yes, there was a time in history when that's the case. Certainly not today. Certainly not today. Today the definition of success, almost definitely, even if you are a successful da'i, a successful scholar, you know, you'll be respected, but still, I doubt that people would say that's the successful one. They would still point to the guy, or maybe probably the guy who's sort of nus-nus, 50-50. You know, got a bit of riches, got a bit of knowledge, somewhere in between, right? But how do we define success? Success is defined for us by this propagation machine. Every time we turn on the TV, every time we listen to the radio, we open the internet, we walk down the street, we see the advertisements, we open a newspaper, we open a magazine, we are being exposed to this indoctrination process. That you are being trained here to be a good consumer. That is not the deen of Islam. That's the dangerous thing. That's the dangerous thing, brothers and sisters. That is not our deen. I'm not saying, don't misunderstand me, that you can't have a good job or have a nice car or whatever. I'm not saying those things. Don't misunderstand. I'm not saying you should sit on top of a pillar for 20 years. I'm not saying that. That's not Islam either. But the important thing you must understand is it is not our deen. That is not our deen. Don't allow yourself to be indoctrinated with a false definition of success. Because if you are not connected with Allah, if your whole life is not based upon, is this thing something pleasing to my Lord or not? Is this action pleasing to Allah or not? Is this thing that I'm going to do, is this halal, is it haram, is it good for me in my afterlife, in this life? They're all connected. This life, the afterlife. My deen, my dunya. In fact, they're all one thing for the Muslim. They're all one holistic whole. That is how we should be thinking. That is the mentality that we should be having. That is our deen. It is immaterial. It should be immaterial for us as to what is the actual result of that in our material terms. What should be important to us is what is the result of that internally. How does that make me as a person? Is that going to bring me closer to Allah? And you will realize that anyone who travels this path, anyone who travels this path, anyone who starts traveling internally, what a journey that is. You take the internal, the inner journey, the journey within yourself, and you start to take that path, you start to explore that realm. You will know. You don't even have to be a Muslim to realize this. You will realize that happiness in reality is a state, an internal state. It really is so obvious. It's so obvious. It's ridiculous. But, you know, even some of us who are intelligent and educated, we haven't quite grasped it. Because that's what, you know, consciousness is. Your body, your senses send signals to your brain. Your body sends signals to your brain. But consciousness, you have the ability to choose how you react to those signals. You do. Just that little fact is a huge realization. So happiness is something that's going on here. What makes you happy? What makes a human being truly happy and at peace and content? Of course, as a Muslim, we believe that what brings true happiness, true peace, true contentment is that we know the reason for which we have been created, and that we fulfill that created purpose, that we submit and surrender ourselves to our Lord and our Creator, and that we follow the guidance that Allah has given to us in the Quran and through the example of His Messenger Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. So this is really in reality success. Because if you have that, you have everything. If you don't have that, you have nothing. So, my brothers and sisters, the biggest danger for you is that. And in reality, by the way, certainly I believe that if you realize this fact, then the other things will dissipate from you anyway. the other things will dissipate from you anyway. If you understand that fact, then the issue, all the other issues in university, you know, girlfriends, boyfriends, alcohol, you know, whatever they may be, those things are, you know, they are going to be, I won't say they won't go altogether, they will not disappear altogether, but, you know, they will be really of a minimal impact, because the fact that you are attracted to those things in the first place is actually a byproduct of you being infected with a false ideology, a wrong way of thinking, a wrong process of conceptualization about what is important in life. That's the problem. So the problem is an internal problem. The problem is to do with your belief. Your problem is to do with what you hold to be dear and to be important and to be true. So this is why we have to go back. We have to go inward. We have to go to this inner dimension. And like I said, too many Muslims who become secularized. We're either Haji Muslims or we're Ramadan Muslims. A lot of Ramadan Muslims now. You know, we're really good Muslims in Ramadan. You know, in Ramadan we pray, in Ramadan we stop shaving, in Ramadan we put on the hijab, in Ramadan stops, everything else stops. Lots of Muslims like that. Then you have the Namazi Muslims, as they call it. They actually, some people have a special name in some cultures, Pakistani culture. They have a special name for someone who prays 5 times a day. It's called a Namazi. Like he's a remarkable type of character. He's someone who actually prays 5 times a day. Right? He's a Namazi. Although the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, said the difference between faith and disbelief is the prayer. Whoever abandons it, it's like they have become a disbeliever. According to at least one of the madhabs, the Hanbali madhab, the person who abandons prayer on purpose has apostatized from Islam. Actually become a murtad, an apostate. This is according to the Hanbali madhab. All the other madhabs agree it is the most serious of the major sins to abandon just even one obligatory prayer on purpose. It is not a unique type of Islam that someone prays 5 times a day. But even, believe me, praying 5 times a day, you have what I would say the 5 times a prayer, 5 times a day Muslim. They are Muslim when they pray. There's many Muslims like that. They're Muslim, and you find this ritual goes on in some of the masjids. You'll find that they have these weird rituals that I'm not sure, well, I have an idea where it comes from, but this type of that strange Islam. They have this box of hats, you see. They walk in, they pick up a hat, they put the hat on, and they pray with the hat on, right? And then they take the hat off and put the hat in the box, and off they go. Khalid Yasin talks about it. You know, it's like it's like what? There's this world where you wear the hat and then you take the hat off. It's like Islam is like on, off. You're in the masjid, yeah. You know, you're praying and this and that. Off. That's it. And I'm back to selling pornography, selling alcohol, selling cigarettes, dealing in riba, yeah, all the haram things. Islam is that's like. And what will you find the prayer of this person? Believe me, if you ask them, please explain to me the meanings. So I go to them, say, I'm a new Muslim. I might have been Muslim longer than some of them, but I'm a new Muslim. He said, please tell me, what does it mean? I mean, I know how to say it, but what does it mean? I'll be able to tell you. What does it mean? What does it mean? I don't know. He doesn't know what he's saying. He might as well give He might as well do that. He might as well just be saying anything. What exactly, apart from the Quran, I will have to say, is something unique. Because it is the words of Allah, even if you don't understand it, it can affect you. It's amazing. It's a miraculous quality of the Quran. But that's only one special dimension of it. In reality, the Quran is supposed to be understood. The Quran says, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's Alif Lam Mim, this is the book, without doubt. In it is guidance for the pious people. It's a book of guidance. It's supposed to be understood. It's supposed to be comprehended. When one of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet was talking to him about his ibadah. The Prophet said, read the Quran once every month. He said, I can do better than that. He said, read it once a week. He said, I can do better than that. He said, okay, you can read it once every 3 days. He said, I can do better than that. He said, you can't read it in less than 3 days because you will not understand it. Meaning, what do you understand from that? That understanding the Quran is imperative. It should be read to be understood, not merely for the sake of reading it. Allah talks in the Quran about those people. One of the things, if you look at the stages in which alcohol was prohibited, the Quran mentions one of the stages that alcohol was prohibited, that Allah prohibited people from praying while they were drunk. Yeah? And why? What is the reason Allah gave? Can anyone tell me the reason Allah gave why you should not pray while you're drunk? Does anyone know the reason? What's the reason mentioned? Yeah? You don't know, thank you very much, you don't know what you will say. This is actually, the scholars use this as an evidence to prove that it is obligatory for you to understand what you're saying in your salah. You must, and that's why they said it is wajib. The minimum amount of Arabic every Muslim has to know is what you are saying in your prayers. When I say has to know, you have to know what it means. You have to know what it means. If you don't know what it means, you are like the person who is drunk. You don't know what you're saying. It's comparable to that. So understanding why, because how? What prayer is it that you are offering to Allah that you don't know what you're saying? And prayer, as-salah, this regular prayer, is supposed to be something that transforms your life. The Quran tells us that one of the reasons why we pray is it because it keeps us away from evil and harmful deeds. But how will it do that? How will it have that transformational effect if we don't understand? It is supposed to be like our night journey. You know when the Prophet ﷺ ascended through the heavens and stood before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's like that. We're standing in front of Allah. There is no one between us and Allah. It's like you're offering a gift to a great king. Although Allah, of course, is not, we don't compare Allah to any king. Allah is above even whatever similitude we could make. But would you go to a king or a prime minister or any important person? Back in the old days, you know, they would, when the people came to visit kings, they would bring them gifts. One of the gifts they would bring them is, for example, slaves. Imagine someone comes to the court of a king and he brings a slave woman. That's all grey hair. Oh, great king, here have I brought you a slave for you. Would this be an acceptable gift for a king? Something that is old and smelly, and I'm not saying that I'm not ageist or anything like that, but I'm saying, what the king's looking for is something young and voluptuous, and what. You get my point? What are you offering? What is your salah? And sometimes it's so fast, like aerobics. 1, 2, 3, go. You must go to the gym. This is not salah. But there are Muslims like that. MashaAllah, they do this. Alhamdulillah, at least they do that. They do it 5 times a day, every day for their life. But it doesn't change them. It doesn't affect them. You will find they cheat, they lie, they steal, they break their promises. People say, oh, I trusted this Muslim, he had a big beard and he prayed 5 times a day. And he did this and he did that. But what prayer is it? What prayer is it? You see, what am I trying to say is that we have to understand, and this is a big danger it's very easy to make Islam this ritualized process. Just to go through the actions, to go through the rituals, but to fail to comprehend the inner dimension. And it's not right either to claim that, oh yes, inwardly I am remembering Allah, and not to adhere to the outward acts of obedience. That both of those are extremities of, they are both extremes. Both those people are extremists, by the way. No, but this is the reality. This is what Islam is supposed to be. You see, so my advice to you, actually, is concentrate on this inner dimension. If you don't know the meaning of the prayer, of what you're saying, first thing you've got to do is start learning. What does it mean? Learn the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha. When you start saying Maliki Yawm Ad-Din, what should come into your mind is Yawm Ad-Din, is the Day of Judgment. Allah is the King. Think about the Day of Judgment. Think about the day that is like 50,000 years. Think about the day when the sun will be real close. You know that, so when you say Maliki Yawm Ad-Din, you are immediately transformed thinking about that Day of Judgment. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the merciful, the mercy you're giving. What does that mean? You're understanding the encompassing mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That He is the most merciful, the most beneficent, the most forgiving. Okay, so you go through the prayer. Each part of that prayer should be affecting you. When you are bowing, when you are standing, when you are prostrating, then you come away from that prayer transformed. That prayer has made a difference to you. You know, you should come away feeling different. And then you see, now what happens is that prayer affects you. It carries you through. So now what happened in that prayer is affecting. It's a process that goes on. And you know, inshallah, it should keep going on until you reach the next prayer. It's the beautiful thing. Why 5 times a day? Why? You look at these prayers strategically placed 5 times a day. That's why it's important not to miss them. There's a reason why that Asr prayer is there, right in the middle of everything. Because Allah put it there because you need to be reminded, because it's just too easy. You're going to become forgetful. You're going to become detached. It's those are the, this is the dangerous moment. If you really, when you're looking at your battle between you and shaitan and your nafs. And look at this battle that is going on. It's a real full-scale war. If you really look at it, it's full-scale war. It is, really. But there is a fortress that you can hide, that you can be behind. That fortress is remembering Allah. Whenever you remember God, whenever you are immersed in the remembrance of God, and I don't just mean saying Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. Again, you could just say these words. This one thing is saying them. The other thing is saying them with the feeling, with the conviction, with the awe, with the reverence, right? But any good deed is obedience to Allah. A person who is constantly thinking about doing good deeds. You know, you walk down the road, there's someone over there, their car is, you know, broken down. You know, they're trying to push that car to the side of the road. You could just walk right by. But why would a Muslim do that? A Muslim is thinking good deeds, good deeds. They're thinking, let me please, there's someone who needs some help. Let me go and help them. Maybe you're in a bit of a hurry. Maybe you'll be a bit late for your lecture. Allah help me to be on time. How much better I will help that person. Good deeds, this is a mentality. That's remembering Allah. When you're like that, it's very hard for shaitan to attack you. Very hard. It's like a fortress. It comes against us like a fortress. Like a strong wall. But you know what? You will find the time, if you look at your life, and look at your sins, and you start thinking about it, I guarantee, you will find the time that shaitan comes to you and brings you to those sins. And anyway, he can't. All he can do is whisper to you. But when does he have that chance? When does he have that chance to whisper to you, to interject, to pull at your desires, to pull at your nafs? It's when you are forgetful. When you're forgetting Allah. It's probably when you've got the TV on. When you're doing something, you know, when your mind is far, when you're on the internet, that's when it comes. Because you know you're far from Allah. You're not thinking, there he comes. His chance. Kink in the fortress. A break in the wall. So this is the state that we should be. Trying always to be in the state of remembrance of Allah. This is an internal dimension. The prayer is there to maintain that. Believe me, it's the best advice if you can follow it. And another piece of advice I want to give you. Very simple thing you can do. But very important. Don't forget to do not leave or do not fail to give the Quran its rights. Everything has rights. You know, we talk a lot about human rights, animal rights, we hear these things. Very good. Human rights are good things in general. I mean, I may disagree with some details of here and there of what they call human rights, but in general, human rights is a good thing. It's one of the good things the West goes on about. Animal rights is a good thing, important thing. Everyone should be given their rights. Everything should be given their rights. Allah has a right. The humans have rights, yes. But Allah also has a right. The Creator has a right. The right of the Creator is that we should worship Him alone and not make any partners with Him. That's the right of God. That's what is due to God. Just like a person who is a worker. If someone works for you or someone works for someone, what is the right of the worker? What's their basic fundamental right? You do some work and what happens? What is the right of the worker? To what? To get paid. Right? It's a basic right. We all agree with that. Everything has its rights. Allah, the right of Allah is that you should not make anything equal with Him. There is nothing equal to Allah. The right of the Quran. Actually, the Quran has many rights. One of the rights of the Quran, according to some scholars, it's not something, anyway, that is, but according to some scholars, the right of the Quran is that you should read it every day. You should read the Quran every day. Do not fail to pick up the Quran and read every day the Quran. Even if it's half a page. Even if it's 3 verses, even if it's 1 verse a day. That's all you can manage. You tell me you can't manage 1 verse a day after Fajr, pick up a Quran, read it. 1 page a day, you can't manage one amongst all the hundreds of thousands of pages that you read on science and computing and biochemistry and sociology and psychology and economics and I don't know, ologies that I don't even know what it means, right? By the way, 99% of which you'll probably never use in your life again. But you can't find time to read a page of the Quran every day. And read it in a language that you can understand? No, of course you can. Don't tell lies to yourself. You can find the time. It's easy. 1 time after Fajr or after Asr. These are the good times. Don't forget, therefore, to give the Quran the rights. The other thing, brothers and sisters, that I really recommend to you, very important, Muslims anywhere, in the university, the same rules apply, and the good thing is here that, these rules apply everywhere. They don't apply to all of your life. But a very important thing is, be careful who you take as your friends. Be careful who you take as your friends. Because you will follow their way. Whoever your friends are, you will follow their deen. When I say their deen, I mean their way of living. Be careful. You take as your friends. Make sure that your friends are moral, they're upright, they're good people, and you will be moral, and you will be upright, and you will be a good person. Even if you don't follow them exactly, believe me, the perfume, okay, will affect you, right? If you live with a perfume seller, even if you don't buy some perfume, don't you think it will come smelling nice? Yeah. If you live with a blacksmith, even if he doesn't pour coals on you, right? What are you going to come? You're going to come smelling of smoke. So the people you are with, you pick up their smell. That means, I'm not saying here, right, that you can't have friends, acquaintances, people who are not Muslim. Because that is okay if they are just people and they are good people and they are moral people and they are upright people. Okay? But even then, don't neglect the fact that you need to be with Muslims and good Muslims. People who pray 5 times a day. People who fast. Right? People who will remind you of Allah. People who, when they advise you, they will advise you, my brother, my sister, don't you know Allah says? Don't you know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says? This is the best friend. When they see you do something wrong, they will try and stop you. That's the best friend. A good friend is not someone who, when they see you doing wrong, they just leave you. That's not a good friend at all. You know, some people mistake that. You know, I consider the duty of being a good friend is when I see my friend say something wrong, when I do something wrong, I stop it. I say, bro, that's not right. What you're doing is wrong. Don't do that. Fear Allah. That's what a good friend does. A good friend advises. They enjoy what is right and they forbid. That's the sign of true love. They enjoy what is right and forbid what is wrong. If you really love someone, that's what you're going to do. It's what you do for your children. You see your kids do something wrong, you try and stop them. It's because they're your kids, you love them. Same with friends. That's how good friends should be. And so therefore I warn you really to separate yourself from the jama'ah. I warn you about separating yourself from the jama'ah. The jama'ah means the group. I don't mean the hizb, right? I'm not saying you have to join a hizb, you know, or a party, right? Or a sect. Yeah, no. When I say jama'ah, I don't mean, you know, tablighi jama'ah, so it's okay if you want to go. I'm not saying that for or against them, but I'm just saying I don't mean that. I mean the jama'ah means being together. Because you know what? The wolf goes for the sheep that is separate. The animal that separates itself from the herd, that's the one the wolf goes for. That's the one shaitan gets. That's why it's very important to be together and stick together and to have good friends. These are very important things for Muslims wherever you are. They're here at university. Finally, brothers and sisters, this is not so much an advice as something I want you to think about. I'm thinking about it, I want you to think about it, because you today, you sitting here today, are the elite. I don't want you to feel big about yourself. That's it, superheroes, you know, whatever, right? The A-team or whatever, right? That's some old school stuff. But you are, right? You are the elite in the sense that you represent a small percentage, I don't know what it is, 5%, 6%, right? Of the population who are going to, who go to university, and of those, even less get a degree. You are going to be the people, whether you live in England or wherever you are, who are going to be influential, most of you, to one degree or another, more influential than many other people in your society. Therefore, what happens here, the way you learn to think here, the way you learn to behave here, is very important. So, don't think that university is a time just to, you know, let it all hang out and have a good time. And I don't need to worry, I'm young. It's really not the right way to think at all. Because believe me, I've reached an age now where I know that my mind, although alhamdulillah I have, you know, some experience, but I know that there are things that in a sense I wish I had studied. I wish I had got my head round. I wish that my mind was flexible enough and pliable enough to be able to get my head around certain problems. That I know that I would have had the energy and I would have had the, you know, the wherewithal to do that if I was younger. And maybe it's not just my mind, maybe it's just my life is just full of, you know, other things. Kids, family, whatever, and this and that. So many things, right? But this is a very important time. It's a time when you have energy. It's a time when you have vigor, physical, intellectual vigor and energy. Don't waste it. And I have to tell you, it's a time Allah is going to ask about. Don't think that Allah will not ask you. Allah will ask you. Your feet will not move. The 2 feet of the sons of Adam, the daughters of Adam, they will not move from their place in front of their Lord until Allah has asked them about 5 things. Your life and how you spent it, your youth and what you did with it. Your money, how you earned it, and how you spent it, and your knowledge and how you acted on it. So your youth is one of those things that Allah is going to question. Meaning, it's a gift. All of these things, if you think about it, your money is a gift. How did you earn it? How did you spend it? Your knowledge is a gift. Your life is a gift. Your youth is a gift. It's a gift. It's an important time. So don't waste this time. Make use of this time. Brothers and sisters, achieve something significant. You know, it may not be visibly significant to the rest of the world, but do something significant. Do something significant with your life. Have an impact, a positive impact on this world, because it is at your age where you're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to contribute. You've got the energy, you've got the vigor, you've got the time, you've got the motivation. Don't waste it. Do not waste it, please. There are so many things that you can get involved in. So many, and that's the other thing about university. You have the potential to meet so many people, to discuss so many subjects, to get involved with so many important issues. They're all here. You will find there's a society for nearly everything you can think of. You know, that's the sad thing. You know, people often say, oh, you know, Abdur, we tried to organize it, you know, we tried to get people to come, but no one came. I said, well, what do you think? You stuck a few posters up and people are going to come? I said, my question to you is, how many talks and lectures do you go to societies that are not the Islamic society? A lot of the time it's, well, actually, none. So why should they come to your talks and lectures? Right? So actually you have a really good opportunity to find out about a lot of things and to interact with people and to share with people. Okay? It's a very, very important time to do that. To exchange ideas. People, by and large, are going to be very willing to listen to what you have to say. Don't waste that opportunity. Number one thing, get rid of that TV. Get rid of the TV, please. Do not watch that pile of dung. You'd like to use a more severe word, but it's a waste of time. It's an enemy. Believe me, it's an enemy to society, an enemy to mankind. Waste of time. You know, you've got 0.01% of what you see on that thing might be valuable. The rest of it is just, you know, you'd be so much better spending your time with other human beings, interacting with them, talking to them, learning from them. So this is another thing that, you know, the society has brainwashed us to sit in these boxes. You know, our rooms are boxes, we travel in boxes, we live in boxes, and we sit in front of a box. You know, we're buried in a box, right? We're born, we get delivered, we're put in a box, right? Then there's another box, the ambulance, the car takes us home to our house box, right? In the bed box, where we eat in the cereal box, right? Okay? Everything boxes, right? We die in a box and we spend, what, 1/3 of our life sitting in front and looking at a box. You know, where is there boxes in nature? Seriously, how many boxes are there out there in nature? You know, we should be interacting with each other, with other human beings. Just don't waste this time, brothers and sisters. Okay? So I really honestly think if you follow my few pieces of advice, very simple. Think deeply about what it means to be a Muslim. Be consciously Muslim all the time. Remember, that's your deen. It's not a part-time thing. It's something that absorbs every moment of your life, every decision of your life. Think like a Muslim. It's your way of living. It's your lifestyle. You are Muslim, that's your lifestyle. Think about, therefore, who you should be emulating. Who you should be emulating. Whose character, whose morals, whose ibadah is the example that we should be looking to. Practically, try to fill your life with being close and remembering God. That means that you understand your prayers. Connect with Allah in your prayers. Understand what your prayers, understand what you're saying. Make sure that the prayer is something that is with khushu, with awe, with reverential awe. You should come away from that prayer, each prayer, feeling different, better. Keep the company of good people. Keep the company of good people. They are the ones who will support you and encourage you to be a good person. That's part of our nature as human beings. And don't waste your time. Make good use of this very, very valuable time that you have. interact with others, share with others, tell others about this, this way that you live. What does it mean? What is it about? Why do you think it's important? Share that knowledge. I'm not saying necessarily going out there to convert people. Just talk to people about it at least. Share with them. Help them to understand. And you, in return, will understand more yourself. So my brothers and sisters, these are some pieces of advice, alhamdulillah, about being a Muslim in university. Okay, has anyone got any questions? Any comments, anything they want to say? Yeah? Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, just one question actually. A general image of Muslims, like among non-Muslims, is that we are sort of really conserved people, living in a box or something, don't want to come out of the box. One thing in university life is that we have got like non-Muslim friends, and most of the time, if they invite us on a dinner or anything, a gathering or something like that, most of the time is in the pub or somewhere like we don't want to go there. And if I say that I won't drink and I will just take some vegetarian thing, hope you might understand what I'm saying, and I go with them, because you're saying that share with them, interact with them. In the university life, especially undergraduates like us, 18 to 20 years of age, those people don't want to sit with us in a class and discuss ideas with us. That's the only way where we can talk with them. So what should be our approach towards that? Should we go to the pub and something like this and can sit and don't drink? A few days back there was a free meal for international students in a church. What I should do with that, I mean, what should be my approach towards that? Just your comments on that.
Okay. I would say, first of all, we have to be very careful. First of all, you have to know yourself. It is a great quality in a human being that they know their limitations. Myself personally, if I go to a church, I know I'm not going to be sitting there clapping and going, Jesus and hallelujah. It's not going to happen to me, right? I know that if I go to a pub and I sit down, I feel sick just smelling alcohol. Inshallah, I am not going to drink that alcohol. I just know it's not going to happen, right? Now there are some other situations that if I was put into them, without naming what they are, but I can imagine a few, right? Where I'm not really quite so sure how well I would do in controlling myself, right? So this is very important. Your primary concern, first of all, is yourself. Your number one responsibility is you, right? That's the first thing you have to think about. It is not worth sacrificing your iman, your Islam, your obedience to Allah in order for this thing. Right? So this is the first thing. You have to know yourself. You mustn't be fooling yourself. Oh yeah, I'm going to go along to give dawah. Right? And you're not. You're just going to go and stare at the pretty girls. Right? You know it. You're not actually talk to anyone about Islam. You're not really going to give any dawah, but there's lots of those nice, blonde European girls there, and, whatever. Okay, you're just fooling yourself. Right? Okay? So don't fool yourself. Okay? So I'm not saying you can't do that, but I'm not saying you can do that. What I'm saying is you have to know your own limitations, your own capabilities, what you can be patient with, what you can't, and you have to work within those frameworks. Right? I asked a scholar who was from Saudi Arabia. This scholar specialized in the fiqh of the minorities, the people who are minorities living in a non-Muslim country. It's a question very similar to what you asked. I asked him because it is something that had been going through my mind for years. Because when I used to visit my parents' house, it quite often happened that they would invite people round for a dinner party. And at the dinner party they would serve, alcohol. Now, I made it clear to my parents that, look, if you want me to sit with you on the table, there must be no alcohol. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said that the believer does not sit on the same tablecloth where there is alcohol. You don't sit on the same table where there is alcohol. That is a general rule. Okay? So I knew about this hadith, okay, and I asked this scholar, I said, but I know that I am as sure, I'm 99% sure that if I sat there on that table, those people would definitely begin to ask me about Islam. Because their curiosity would not be able to, they would not be able to restrain themselves, right? They're going to be asking, oh, Anthony, why did you become a Muslim? And some of these people are quite important people. My parents, mix in that sort of society. So my potential to be able to explain things and, whatever, is the potential for giving dawah is big. So I said to the scholar, so, obviously I've never sat on the table and always said no, but, is that the right thing to do? He said to me, I said, oh, and by the way, I'm not afraid at all that I would drink alcohol. I don't have any inclination to do that. He said to me, you should go. And you should sit. And even if you don't talk to them directly about Islam, right? Even if indirectly you can say things, that would be beneficial as well. Right? So I thought, okay. So I said, but didn't the Prophet say that you shouldn't sit on the same table where there's alcohol? He said, yes, that's true. But the benefit that is going to be bought from you being there and being able to talk to those people is much greater than that small amount of harm. There is a harm, there is a small amount of harm. There is harm, but it's small. So compared to the benefit, then that benefit outweighs that harm. Right? So then I thought, okay, let's test this, see how far we can push it. Right? So I said, what if I just sip a little bit of alcohol? Yeah, I just take a little bit of, just a little sip, just to make them feel, what I'm joining in and this and that, so I can talk to them and this and that. He said, no, that is not allowed under no circumstances. I said, well, how come this is allowed and then that is not allowed? Okay. He said, well, this is the thing. He said, you can only know this when you know the Sharia well. When you understand the Sharia well, when you understand the purpose and the intention of the Sharia well, then you will know that. So the actual drinking of alcohol is a serious matter. It's a major sin, even if it's a small amount. Okay? It's a kaba'ir. The person who drinks it, the person who carries it, the person who pours it is cursed. Whereas what the Prophet said about, he just said, the believer does not sit on the same tablecloth where there is alcohol. Meaning, the condemnation of this is not as serious as that. Meaning there's more of an allowance. Okay? But in general, in order to be able to know, you have to be able to weigh things up. Where is the benefit and where is the harm? Is there really a benefit? Is there really something that can be achieved from this? Or is this just me an excuse to hang out with people? Right? You have to know. Am I really going to be able to influence people, to make them have a good image of Islam? Right? Or am I just fooling myself? Right? So the question you have to ask yourself, for example, well, if I go there, how will anyone even know I'm a Muslim? My presence there, how is it, what am I going to do with sort of badge, Muslim on my head or something? Or what, I'm a Muslim, talk to me, or I'm not going to blow you up, don't worry. Whatever it is, that might be an idea, right? But the point is, if you're trying to say, oh, I want to achieve some benefit from that, you have to be realistic about the benefit. The sisters, for example, who are wearing hijab, fair enough. Everyone's going to know they're Muslims, right? So there's a statement that they're making there straight away, right? In general, there are, on the other hand, I want to say, there are lots of places you can mix with non-Muslims other than the pub, right? Or the whatever, right? I'm sure they have many societies who do sports that you could participate in. Climbing, skiing, mountain biking, football, I don't know, there's a whole list of them, right? That you could get involved in those things and you could spend time with them without you having to be involved in anything that is really haram. Yeah? I'm sure there are many societies, ecological society, whatever, many things that Muslims should be interested in. You could go to their events without, being involved with anything that is really haram. Yeah, okay? So what I'm trying to say is that you really have to assess and be honest about that. Is there a benefit? I can't tell you, yes, you can do this, or no, you can do that. I can just tell you generally, some of these things are not fixed, but you have to know yourself, you have to know your own weaknesses, your own limitations, and you have to make a really honest assessment of where the benefit is. I know that if I sat in that dinner party, I'm sure there would be a benefit. Number one, I know I can talk about Islam eloquently. I can express myself relatively well in a short period of time. Okay? So I'm pretty sure that even if I have a moment's opportunity, I could say something that would be beneficial. Right? But you have to assess yourself. Is that the same for you? Right? Just to say, oh, they have a bad idea about Muslims and me being there is going to counter that idea is a bit too vague, in my opinion. Right? You need something a little bit more concrete than that, you know, in my opinion. Right? So, and again, I think there are some circumstances, some environments that, you know, now the church, for example, well, yeah, I would go to a church. I would. Why not? Right? I wouldn't go there if there was some actual act of worship going on. I wouldn't stay there. But if it's going to a church because there's a discussion there, or that's a chance to meet people, I would go. I have been. I've been to churches and I've been invited to churches to talk about Islam. The fact that it was a church didn't stop me. Okay. So yeah, I mean, for myself, I weigh up every situation and I think about where are the benefits, where are the harms. Is that good for everyone? Has anyone got more questions about that? Have you got the general idea of what I'm saying here? Yeah? It's an important question. Jazakallah khair. Anything else? Yes, brother.
When you are talking about explaining Islam to the kid, that Islam is a submission and it will automatically turn them off.
Yeah.
What should we say instead to them?
Okay, I mean, I had some time, so that I had a captive audience. You know, it's not like they were going to walk off and say, yeah, thanks, bye. You know, they had to sit there and they had to listen to that. So I had time to, I did say Islam means submission, but what I did is I explained to them. You see, I said to them, what I said to them is, because nearly always they wear a school uniform. Yeah? So in this country, most schools, they have a school uniform. So I say to them, or even if they don't, I say, don't you have a school uniform? And sometimes they're allowed to come in normal clothes to the mosque. They don't come in the school uniform. So I said, do you have a school uniform? They say, yes. I said, who likes wearing the school uniform? So how many do you think put their hands up? Yeah? Always there's one or two, but most of them, they don't like it. I say, okay. I said, so why do you wear your school uniform? Right? Some of them say, oh, because, you know, we can be identified as being part of the school. And I said, yeah, but I said, there's lots of different things you could do. You know, you could have a look at a hat saying, you know, something or whatever, right? You don't have to wear a school uniform. So at the end of it, they're going to say, we wear it because we have to. And then I said to them, I thought it was a free country. And believe me, you know in the cartoons when you see those bubbles and the light bulb goes in, it's like that on their faces. They go, some of them went, oh yeah! You know, it's like they just realised that, you know, I said, you don't want to do it, but you do it because you have to. So what's freedom? What does it mean, freedom? Oh yeah, but. Okay, there's lots of buts here. Why this and why that? But the point is, so I say, what is it when you do something which you don't want to do? Because someone else is telling you to do it. What have you done? I said, oh, we submitted. We surrendered. So you know what submission is. You do it in your life all the time. In fact, that's I say it's normal for people to submit. Right? You submit to your wife. You know, your wife wants you, you don't really want to do it, but your wife wants you to do this, your wife wants you to do that. What do? You submit, you surrender. I don't feel like it, but you do it out of love. Or you do it out of fear, or you do it out of... or even, you know, the wife maybe, you know. But I'm saying in general, you could submit out of love, you could submit out of fear, or you could submit because, yeah, you know that that's the right thing to do. I don't feel like doing it, but that makes sense. Now that's normal. I said, but, so then who is the one who is most worthy of being loved? Surely it is the creator of everything that can be loved. It is Allah, it is God. Who is the one who is most worthy of being feared? Because whatever you're afraid of, Allah is the creator of. So God is more worthy of being feared. And who is the most wise? If you're going to follow someone because what they say makes sense, who is the most wise? Who is the Almighty? It is God. So therefore, God is more worthy of submission than anything else. Submission always happens. You do it in your life the whole time. So that's how I explain to them that, see, first of all, I try to show them, look, submission is not something actually strange in your life. Right?
But if you say to them, Islamic submission, don't they just, okay, but...
Yeah, but like I said, I have time to explain to them what it means. You understand? Right? So generally in dawah, I wouldn't say that you go up to people and say Islam means submission to God, just like that. Right? It does mean that, but what you have to do is you have to talk to people in a language they understand. It doesn't mean that you talk to English people in English. Yeah? It means that people in this country have a certain mentality. You have to be able to translate the concepts of Islam with that mentality that they can appreciate. Yeah? You have to be able to relate to them. Yeah? That's what's important. So you have to think of ways to be able to, so, I mean, it's not something I would really discuss, Islam means submission. I would much rather go back and talk about Tawheed, and talk about these type of things, and so on and so forth. So there's different ways of dealing with it, and how you would explain things to people. Yeah, is that okay, bro? So I sort of thought someone's hand went up. There's the cameraman, yeah.
Which is to be prioritized? Reminding other Muslims about their deen, or telling the non-Muslims about the religion, about Islam?
I don't think there is any, I don't say it is a priority this or that. Everything has its place. You should not say, there is no reason to say one thing precludes the other, or one thing. I mean, there was one scholar who came here, he said if you are in England, the priority is the non-Muslims. Otherwise you shouldn't be here. Alright? You're only here for dawah. That's it. If you're not here for dawah, go. This is what he said. So, your business here, and then he said, actually, in reality, everyone needs a reminder. Muslim, non-Muslim, everyone has that duty. I think it's a false idea. Some people say, oh, our priority is the Muslims. That is a false saying. That is not the saying. The Prophet ﷺ and his companions never understood Islam like that. Okay? There were always Muslims, there were always munafiqun, there were always people who are some weaker than others. But they never said, oh, we will concentrate our efforts on giving dawah only to the Muslims, and we will not concern ourselves with giving dawah to the non-Muslims. No, in fact, what you should deal with is whatever you are confronted with. If there is a Muslim, you talk to the Muslim. If you're confronted with a non-Muslim, you should talk to the non-Muslim. Everyone has a right to your, to your advice and to your help according to your ability. Yeah? Any more questions?
It's kind of a very tricky question for me.
Okay.
I have been reading some, especially in news, lot of Muslim scholars. As you said, you yourself explained that you met a scholar who said, if you are here to give dawah, then you should stay otherwise now. There are loads of scholars who give quite a contradictory kind of statements.
Yeah.
And they keep on giving them.
Well, the same scholar contradicts himself?
No, like...
Or two different scholars come up with
for example, I can give you an example. Almost 3 weeks back, I heard a scholar giving that we have so many Muslims over here. We can, if we ask them, all of them can be moving bombs. And similarly, almost 2 weeks back, or rather last week, I heard another scholar saying that you should not watch that specific program because it's against Muslims, and whoever support them, they are munafiqs. And he gave a fatwa on that.
I'm absolutely sure that anyone says every Muslim should get a moving bomb is not a scholar. And the problem comes in here, brother. The real problem comes is that, the real problem comes in is that, they have a saying, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Yeah? Because we Muslims have reached such a low level of ignorance that people could actually think someone says something like that is a scholar. Because for many people, any guy with a turban and a beard, he's a scholar. That's it. He's got a turban, he's got a beard, he has 10 words of Arabic. Oh, mashallah. scholar, sheikh, you know. And really, believe me, that is the problem. Yeah? So, you know, I heard, even in the UAE, an Arabic, not that you could say most of the people in the UAE are not Arabs, but, you know, but a country with, you know, Arabs, one of the imams of the masjid was a Sikh. Yes, for 20 years, he just took it as a job. He managed to learn enough Quran. He was not a Muslim, he was actually a Sikh the whole time. But the people didn't know. They didn't know. The Sikh was leading them in prayer. He got found out, you know. And this is the thing, is that we don't, you know, our state of knowledge is so low. You know, it is so low that we don't even know who's a scholar and who's not a scholar anymore. It's not a problem. It's not so much that, I mean, the scholars, of course, different scholars do come with different opinions. Yeah? But, I mean, the sort of thing that you're talking about is not something that, you know, is a difference. Is something that scholars differ about. Yeah.
But the thing is that it is a very important issue that has to be addressed. So, what should be our reply to that, or what should be our reply from our
problem,
scholars?
like I said, brother, the real problem is this. If the people are in such a state of ignorance, that anyone, for example, if you have never read the Quran, okay, in a language that you can understand, yeah, so I can say, you really, what is upon you is you're just going to be following anyone who it comes to your mind that seems to be a person who is a good Muslim and who's a scholar. That's all you're going to think. You don't, because you won't have any other point of reference. You won't be able to say, does that really match with what I remember reading in the Quran? Does that really match with what I remember the Prophet ﷺ saying? If we don't bother to pick up the Quran and read the hadith and this and that and be familiar with them, then, you know, we don't have any capacity to be able to judge these things. This is the problem. The problem is our ignorance. Believe me, if you get knowledge and you study and you learn, then these things will become more and more clear to you. You know, I have to say, by the way, not that this is a dalil, yeah, but even the British government started realizing that most of the people, if not all of the people who have become suicide bombers, are people who do not know anything about the religion, and mostly very ignorant people. In fact, when people actually go to learn Arabic and study the deen, people who are on that way, they leave it. Right? Now, of course, you would say, yeah, but doesn't Bin Laden and Zarqawi and these people, and don't they know Arabic? Don't they know Quran? Yes, they do. Okay? But really what you have to understand, it becomes very obvious that these individuals are actually motivated by political and ideological motivations. It becomes very clear that when you study things just a little bit more deeply, okay, that they are actually not really able to justify their claims from the text of the Quran. They will use verses of the Quran, they will use certain things, but you will almost find very easily, you don't have to dig very deeply, you will begin to find that they are taken out of context, right? They are failing to reference those things against other statements that contradict the position that they take, right? You'll also find that if you really know who are the scholars, if you really know the scholars are the people who have sat and studied with people who are scholars, who have sat and studied with people who are scholars, and you can trace this all the way back to the time of the Prophet. Yeah? So these people say, yes, this is a person, he is eligible to give fatwa. No one said about Bin Laden he is eligible to give. No scholar said he is eligible to give fatwa. No one. He never studied with any of the people of knowledge long enough. He sat with some scholar in Yemen for an amount of time. He has read some books and this, but he has not sat with the ulama and the people said, Bin Laden is a man who can give fatwa. Let alone, I mean fatwa, you know, maybe about should he divorce her or this or that, or should you, but about issues that affect the whole Muslim ummah, these issues should only even be talked about the biggest of all the scholars, because they affect the most type of people. So even if you can give fatwa on issues like this, you need to be in a different category to be able to talk about things like this. Okay? But you will find when you look and you examine, you will find that these people, their motivations are very strongly political, they are ideological, okay? They are often emotional, and those ideological, political, and emotion things, right, they have blinded them, and they are therefore just using the text to justify their idea. This is a very dangerous thing. You have an idea in your mind, and I want to go and find somewhere in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Bhagavad Gita, wherever you like. Any book you can find, some text to justify your position on something. That is not the right way. The right way is to understand everything holistically and to understand it as a whole, and then to surrender yourself to that. Not to make the text surrender to your idea. Right? So when you really begin to look and you see what the text says, there's no way that you could ever claim that Muslims should go up blowing women and children and committing acts of terrorism. Because it's clearly against the texts. And even these people now, you'll find that this Dr. Zarqawi, and apparently, I haven't heard it, but apparently he was actually released a video denying that he ever, Al-Qaeda has ever called people to blow up civilians and this and that. It's not Al-Qaeda, he's actually denying it now. Because why? The whole tide is turning against these people. Okay, because people are now, unfortunately they didn't have knowledge, but what they're doing is they're seeing the result with their eyes. They're seeing the result. They're seeing what's going on in Iraq. They're seeing that what's happening. Ordinary people are getting massacred. Women, children, Muslim women and children, not even non-Muslims, they're getting massacred. They're just, well, this is ridiculous. How did we ever get to this thing? Because it was wrong from the beginning, and now they're waking up. Okay? So it's something that really, I think, even the blind are beginning to see this. Yeah? And to understand that this is no way is this from the teachings of Islam. Keep your hands clean.
Yeah, I just really agree with you because I've looked into this issue a lot, and there was a Hamas spokesman who said, you know, the reason we do suicide bombings, it's not just because of the reward in paradise, it's also because we don't have helicopters and fighter airplanes, and so it's just angry. People are very angry, and then they'll use their religion to justify it. It's not limited. Islam is the most prominent in right now. That's what it's
prominent in the media, but the most suicide bombings have in fact been done by the Tamil Tigers. Yeah. And there's a professor, an American professor, who actually did a research paper on it. He found that something like only, I think it was 28% or something like that, of actual suicide bombings were done by Muslims. So most of the terrorist actions that are committed are not committed by. So it goes contrary to the saying that not all Muslims are terrorists, but every terrorist is a Muslim. It's absolutely rubbish.
I was just going to ask you, you say about we should integrate Islam into our daily lives, and we should grow our life. How would you contract people like Islamic Think who say that religion and the state should be separated for the evolution of the nation?
I don't need to contradict him.
No, how would you counteract his claim?
I said that's not what the Quran teaches. The Quran is the word of God. So I don't really care what you say. You know, what do I care what you say? You have your lakum dinakum waliya din. You have your religion, I have mine. You know? So your religion is based on what you believe. That's not what my religion claims. That's what I would say.
But have you seen that happen here?
What?
As in separating the state from the religion.
Okay, what's the result? Really, what's the result? Yeah. Is it really something good? You see, what you have to really understand is that, you know, when they talk about the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, you have to really think about how much propaganda is going on. Okay? In fact, the most chaos that really occurred, the real thing that affected Europe concerning religion was not actually a theocracy. It was actually the rise of Protestantism. It's the battle between Protestants and Catholics that tore Europe apart, that basically made people think that religion and politics should be absolutely separated. Actually, you know, although Jesus says, according to the Gospels, render unto Caesar, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. And some Christians have claimed that, you know, this is a blueprint for secularism, right? However, historically, it's not been. actually understood like that. Okay, it hasn't been understood. Okay, certainly the Catholics and even Protestants, and even you only need to look in America, right? Is they have not been that keen. They have not really made this distinction between religion and politics. They're always trying to bring religion back into politics because, in fact, it's a contradiction in terms. Any belief that you hold and any morals that you hold to, if you hold to them and you believe them truly, you are not only going to implement them in your own personal life, you have to, inevitably, try to implement them in the public life because it's just simply not true that human beings are just individuals wandering around. We're not just individuals. We live in families and societies, in towns and in cities, right? And what other people do and say and believe affects everyone else. So you see it happening, right? So this moral majority, the religious right is a huge force in politics in America. Why does America, you know why America supports Israel? You talk about secularism. Why does America have this unflinching support for Israel? Really? If you look at it, it's to do with theology. It's to do with a particular heretical brand of Christian theology. It's Christian Zionism. In fact, in some instances, it's even more specific. It's the belief that some Christians have that Jesus is going to return when the Jews are back in Israel, then Jesus will return. And these people actually there want to bring back, they want Jesus to come, because when Jesus comes back, they believe the rapture is going to happen. He's going to, take all the believers up with him to heaven or whatever. Yeah, okay, so this rapture is going to happen, right? So they actually want to bring it on. They actually, as in the words of George Bush, bring it. They want it to happen. They want Armageddon to come, right? So for them, keeping the Jews in Israel is a theological construct that's from their religion, because it doesn't make any sense politically. It doesn't make any sense economically, except that there is a powerful Jewish lobby in America. But they've merged that with their particular brand, okay, of theology. So it just shows that what is secularism anyway? I mean, Joseph Smith, he might deny that, but that's the reality. So it just shows how much religion does influence politics, even if you claim that it's secular. So I think even secularism probably doesn't really, and maybe cannot really exist, unless you totally marginalize religious people and say that if you have a religious belief, you simply cannot be involved practically in political life, which I suppose is the sort of French political sort of, that's the sort of furthest extreme that you would take it. Yeah, you can have your belief, but literally it has to be personal. And if you're religious and you really believe in your religion, you can't be involved in public life. But then again, how far do you stretch it? You can't be a mayor, you can't be a head teacher, you can't be, you ultimately end up marginalising religious people. And how do you have a pluralistic society? I mean, the whole thing is a massive contradiction. So I don't think you can really effectively point to a few years of human experimentation where we've had these secular societies, which, the jury is still out as to how successful they've been. I mean, we could argue that secularism is the reason why kids are stabbing each other in the street. Or secularism combined with materialism. Okay? Lack of religious morals, lack of this guidance, society is beginning to crumble. It's beginning to fall apart at the seams. So I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I'm saying, it's very hard to say one way or another. So how do you therefore advocate, on what basis do you advocate secularism? Unless you say, my book says that, my book says that, but that's, that's your belief and that's my belief, so why should we care? Why should you care?
I guess I was just trying to see how, for instance, Great Britain has evolved from that as a nation, because...
But Great Britain, okay, it calls itself a secular society, but then it also has official religion. The head of the state is actually also the head of the church. And that members of the church have specific seats in the House of Lords, so they're intimately involved within government and within society. So it's not really completely secular. And it's one of those things, Again, it's a contradiction. Democracy, what is democracy? Depends who's defining it. Give me a definition of democracy. What is freedom? Freedom doesn't really exist. Secularism, similarly, doesn't really exist. It's one of those things that's an idea that has, you know, unless you sort of take it to the extreme of communism, where you are actually, atheism is the official religion, you know, like in the USSR, you know, atheism was the official religion. That would seem to be, to me, the ultimate, you know, logical conclusion of that idea of secularism, which I'm sure Joseph Smith himself wouldn't believe. It was just another contradiction he has to deal with, amongst the many that he has to deal with. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and Jazakallah khair. We ask Allah subhanahu to guide us all in the right path. The problem is that maybe it would be good if you just give some hints and some talks about the da'wah. Some people, they avoid giving da'wah to non-Muslims because they said they think I should not give da'wah if I don't have knowledge, or if I didn't memorize Quran, or I don't have well, I think da'wah can be done by through different means and through so I think
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair, brother. I mean, I do want to emphasize to everyone is that you do not have to be a scholar. You don't have to be a scholar to give da'wah. You should, if you're talking to someone about Islam, you should know what you're talking about. But you don't have to be a scholar. And you shouldn't say things about Islam that are not true. That's also important. But I mean, how much knowledge do you need to be able to explain to people about the oneness of Allah? To explain some details about the Prophet, the life of the Prophet? Even if you can't say, there's so many ways you can give da'wah. By being a good neighbor, by being a good student, you know, by being polite, by having the manners, the adab and the akhlaq of a Muslim. This is da'wah. SubhanAllah, we all know that many people became Muslim by observing the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay? Through his honesty, his trustworthiness, his good character, his kindness, and so on and so forth. These, for many people, had more impact than any words could have. So, it goes back to what I was saying, is that I also think that if you imbibe within yourself Islam as a deen, as a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of being, and you think deeply about your character, about how you interact with people, about these things, then, you know, that will show. That is a way of giving down. So, you know, if you can't talk, you can give a book, you can give a video, you can do so many things. You don't have to, you know, be able to be a scholar to give down. There's so many almost unlimited ways that you could do that. But I think everyone here should look at it as their responsibility to be able to at least explain to whoever they, you know, have a connection with, as much about Islam as they can. That is a duty. I don't think that Allah will not ask you. Allah will ask you. And if you can't do that, at the very minimum, to make sure that people leave with a good impression of you as a Muslim. They will be able to say, oh, you know, they're sitting in front of the TV, say they go back home, yeah, and they're sitting with their family, and they say, oh, it comes on TV again, all those Muslim terrorists and this and that. They'll be able to say, I know Muslims are not like that, they're not all like that. My friend was a Muslim. He was like this and he was like that, and she was like this and she was like that. And a really good example is, subhanAllah, of this Bangladeshi boy in New York, who there was a Jew who had just come from his Hanukkah, which is their Jewish New Year celebrations with his girlfriend. They were on the tube, on the underground, what they call it, the subway, on the subway, and he was just like saying Happy Hanukkah, this and that, and this gang of youths started saying, you're a Jew, aren't you? That's the, you know, that's when you killed Jesus, you know. You killed Jesus and this and that, whatever, right? And they started attacking this guy. And this Bangladeshi boy gets up, he's the only person on the train. The girl was saying even other Jews, all of them, they just all disappeared down to the other end of the train. The only person who came up to defend him was a Muslim from Bangladesh. SubhanAllah, he's there on the TV saying, this is what Islam teaches us, to help people, and we don't care whether you're a Jew or this or that. You know, I saw someone in trouble, and SubhanAllah, what dawah is that? I don't know what he knew about his deen, yeah? But millions of people are seeing that at the time when, you know, this is all after 9/11 and this and that and whatever. So this is really the type of way Muslims should really be, you know. So there's so many ways that you can show people really what is the true spirit of Islam. But you will do that anyway. If you are thinking like I said in my lecture, and your mentality is like that, that's how you will be. You cannot help it. You know? If you really love Allah, that love for Allah is going to be bursting out of you. You're going to just want to share it with everybody. Alright? It's because, you know, our hearts have become cold and they've become hard and we don't have this love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anymore. And this is why we are like that. You know, really.